What's going on, guys? It's Danny from Fantasy Stock Exchange here, and today I'll be going through my wide receiver starts and sits where I break down every single wide receiver matchup, who you guys can start, who you guys should sit, and ultimately who's a viable flex option this week entering week 11 of fantasy football. For the parameters of this video, if you guys are new, a start would indicate a player I consider inside my top 24 this week. A flex would be a player, that wide receiver 3, 4, top 40ish range at the wide receiver position. And a sit would be anyone currently outside of my top 40 wide receivers for this week entering week 11 of fantasy football. In this video, we will be breaking down every single relevant wide receiver cornerback matchup and potential game scripts so you guys can stay best informed for your wide receiver start sit decisions for this week for those crucial matchups entering playoff weeks for fantasy. But either way, let's try to get this video to over 200 likes. So if you enjoy, make sure you leave a like down below. Comment your favorite wide receiver start sit and potential decisions you are making this week. And of course, subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 20,000 subscribers as always. Appreciate you guys for that continued support nonetheless. But before we get into the video, as always, got to hit the damn intro. All right, before I get into the game-by-game analysis, here's the matchup chart, a chart solely based on this year's data now. If you guys are unfamiliar with the chart, this chart is an aggregate of fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, rank in the opponent's pass defense DVOA, rank in PFF coverage grade, as well as the rank in weighted average overall on the right, aka the column that you guys want to most pay attention to. You guys can see some of the easier matchup this week would be Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool of the Chicago Bears going up against the Atlanta Falcons. Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton going up against the Las Vegas Raiders, Amon St. Brown going up against the New York Giants, and Stephon Diggs / Gabe Davis going up against that Cleveland Browns defense. On the flip side, the harder matchups this week happen to be Devontae Adams and Matt Collins going up against the Denver Broncos, Michael Pittman going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, Jacoby Myers going up against the New York Jets, and Garrett Wilson / Elijah Moore going up against that New England Patriots secondary. For those of you that are wondering, the bye weeks this week, the teams that are on bye happen to be the Jacksonville Jaguars, Miami Dolphins, Seattle Seahawks, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I'm sure if you have players on that team, you would have known that already. But before we get into the game analysis, we have to look at the potential shadow matchups this week forecasted by PFF's Ian Harditz. Number one shadow is expected to be Eagles wide receiver A.J. Brown, expected to be shadowed by Colts cornerback Stephon Gilmore. Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin, expected to be shadowed by Texans rookie cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. And then finally, Raiders wide receiver Devontae Adams is expected to be shadowed by Broncos cornerback Patrick Surtain, one of the best cornerbacks in the entire NFL. So make sure you take that into consideration for your matches, but realistically, you are not sitting any of these guys regardless. Now let's go on to the 1 p.m. slate, the first kickoff on Sunday afternoon. We have the Panthers traveling on the road to play the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens are 13-point home favorites in this game. 41.5 set over under, with the over being hit at a 55% clip according to the money. And in terms of this matchup, starting it off, the only player that is even relevant for this matchup from the wide receiver position is going to be DJ Moore from Carolina, who I think you can consider as a high-end wide receiver 3 in this matchup. As we know, DJ Moore has dominated targets per usual, but his fantasy volatility all starts at the game's most important position. With the inadequate quarterback play that the Panthers have seen this year, DJ's elite ability to command targets has really been left to waste. Obviously, as we know, his upside is still extreme in a higher volume pass game environment, but the Panthers passing offense currently averages the 5th least passing attempts per game in the entire NFL, trailing under 30 passing attempts per game, despite a team that has been conducive to negative game scripts all year. He's really frustrating to roster because you clearly see the talent, you clearly see the volume that could potentially be at hand given his team market share on this offense. But until the quarterback situation improves, I do think he's a volatile boom bust wide receiver 3 with the upside, with the fact that he's just damn good at football. He can break off a play any single week that's going to keep his ceiling intact. But for the most part, given the inadequate quarterback play, his range of outcomes is extremely volatile. So trust him in that wide receiver 3 range. I'm not ready to put him into the wide receiver 2 range as an auto start every single week. On to the next matchup, we do have the Bears traveling on the road to play the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons are 3-point home favorites in this game. 49 set over under, with the over being hit at a 53% clip. So the Sharps are clearly expecting a high-scoring affair between these two middling type of teams. On the Bears side, we are flexing Darnell Mooney on this reinvigorated Bears offense due to the recent play of Justin Fields. I mean, Darnell Mooney has that picture-perfect matchup going up against the most volatile fantasy secondary right now with the Atlanta Falcons, and due to his dominant team share splits, needs to enter your lineup. His high-end wide receiver 3, due to the lack of overall passing volume in this offense, really affecting his ceiling. Again, this team has no single game this year with over 30 team passing attempts, but I still want access to Justin Fields' number one target, given the level of quarterback play he's displaying. Again, Mooney's been a little bit boom bust this year, but this is the prime matchup for a boom week. On the Falcons side, I do think Drake London is also an automatic start in your lineup as a top 30 level play. Not a starting range, not a top 24 play, but I do consider him as a high-end wide receiver 3/flex. After struggling in that week 4 to 9 type of area, London really picked up his fantasy point production in week 10, and he's always had the underlying metrics that would have dictated so. In a matchup against arguably the worst defense now in the NFL after the recent trades of Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith at the trade deadline, I expect the over to hit in this game and for the Falcons to experience a ton of offensive success. And to do so, London has to be an integral part of this team's game plan. So to recap it, Darnell Mooney, Drake London, both figuring in that wide receiver 24 to 30, high-end wide receiver 3 flex range, in my opinion, for my rankings this week. Next matchup, we have the Commanders traveling on the road to play the Houston Texans. Texans are 3-point home underdogs in this game, 40.5 set over-under, with the over being hit at an 80% clip. And on the Commanders side, alpha wide receiver Terry McLaurin is in your lineup as a start this week versus Houston. The Commanders wide receiver 1 has commanded 25+% of his targets in each of Taylor Heineke's starts this season. The volume has been that of an elite wide receiver in the NFL, and we should continue to expect the adequate passing volume for this team down the stretch. Heineke, isn't a world beater, but he's played well enough to keep this starting job, something that raises Terry McLaurin into that weekly fringe top 15 wide receiver range of my rankings. I also think that Curtis Samuel is a flex option this week as a wide receiver 3. This is still a player that's averaged about 12 PPR points per game with Heineke starting, and I do think that volume alone, being the clear number 2 driving force of this Commanders offense, gets him into your lineup as a top 30 level wide receiver. On the Texan side, you can flex both Nico Collins and Brandon Cooks. This has the looks of developing into a 1A, 1B type of situation between Cooks and Collins, with Cooks, offering that steadier floor, veteran presence. You kind of know what you're going to get with him. He's going to be in that, 10 to 18 PPR point range any single given week. With Nico Collins obviously holding that upside, big play threat, ability to score touchdowns in this offense. And we're finally seeing that clear involvement in this offense with his most recent game, commanding a 27% targets per row run rate and a 26% target share. Both are fine flexes as high to mid-end wide receiver 3s in a matchup against a volatile Commanders secondary. Next matchup, we do have the Browns traveling on the road to play the Bills. Bills are 7.5-point home favorites, 49.5 set over under, with the under being hit at an 86% clip. Keep in mind, this game was scheduled to be in Buffalo, but due to recent snowfall, it actually has been moved to Detroit. So keep that in mind when you're making your decisions. But on the Bills side, we obviously know the deal. I mean, start Diggs as a weekly top 5 wide receiver, but I also think Gabe Davis, of course, has to be in our lineup as a flex high-end wide receiver 3, given that big play prowess he brings on a great offense. Don't really have to go too in depth in here. I mean, let's be real. Diggs has commanded 30+% of the targets in each of the last 3 weeks and has a 30% target share on the season, while Gabe has commanded a respective target share total of 30%, 15%, and 25% in the last 3 weeks. You know they're going to be in your lineup. You don't overthink them. Obviously, Stephon Diggs, very high floor, very high ceiling. Gabe Davis offering a little bit more volatility, but the ceiling is always there to potentially be a top 5 to 10 wide receiver on the week when it comes to Gabe Davis, especially in a matchup against the susceptible Browns defense. On the Browns side, you can start Amari Cooper and flex Donovan Peoples-Jones. Amari Cooper has been this team's staple wide receiver 1 all season, 25% seasonal target share this year. But I also think that Donovan Peoples-Jones has been making waves recently. I mean, we've seen this guy command over 20+% of the targets in each of his last 3 games. We know that Amari is still the top dog here, but I do think that DPJ has to be considered in the wide receiver 3 range for this matchup. The over-under line in this game has been raised from 42.5 to 49.5 after the NFL announced that it will be moved from the snowy Buffalo to Detroit. So keep that in mind. We do expect from the sharp standpoint that more points are going to be scored in this matchup with the move to the Detroit Dome rather than in that cold environment. So Vegas expects a lot of points. You should as well. I do think that all wide receivers that I've mentioned can have monster days in this game. Next matchup, we have the Lions traveling on the road to play the New York Giants. Giants are 3-point home favorites in this game. 45 set over under, with the under being hit at a 54% clip. And I'm going to keep this extremely brief. The only fantasy relevant wide receiver that is entering your lineups on either team this week is Amon St. Brown for the Detroit Lions. He's been an absolute target magnet anytime he's been healthy this year, and it's commanded 9+ targets in each game. He's played 80+% of the snaps. I'm really confident to say that I am now while you still have the chance. Again, this is a potential wide receiver one, top 12 level rest of season wide receiver that is probably being had in that wide receiver 2 price range. And the injuries he was dealing with earlier in the mid portion of the season, I do think that he could potentially raise to wide receiver 8 to 12 price tag, and validly so. I mean, this is an elite target commander. We know this team's going to throw the ball. Amon St. Brown is going to be the number one receiver for this team moving forward. On the Giants side, the closest that would enter the top 40 would be Wan'Dale Robinson, but given his lack of targets in recent weeks, I simply want him to regain that role before I trust him as a top 40 level play. I clearly see the upside here. Young, talented player, juice after the catch. I understand the fit in this offense, but until he gets that consistent involvement, he can't enter your lineup as a top 40 level wide receiver, in my opinion. Next matchup, we have the Rams traveling on the road to play the New Orleans Saints. Saints are 3-point home favorites in this game. 39 set over-under, with the under being hit at a 95% clip. Clearly, these Sharps expect a very, very low-scoring affair in this game. Saints side, rookie wide receiver Chris Olave is an every week top 20 wide receiver, with Michael Thomas on IR and expected to miss the rest of the season. As we know, he's committed an impressive 24% target share as a rookie and has been the lifeblood of this Saints offense all year. Obviously, he's entering your lineup. Don't overthink it. Chris Olave, top 20 wide receiver. I also think that Jarvis Landry comes in as a fringe top 40 to 36 level play at the wide receiver position, given that involvement we saw in his first game back this week in that Saints offense. 21% target share and a 24% target per run rate. He looks to continue that involvement against a reeling LA Rams team. On the Rams side, the only player worth a spot in your lineup is A-Rob as a volatile mid to low end wide receiver 3. Their passing offense is a complete mess this year. And realistically, without Cooper Kupp, they might struggle mightily to even move the ball. I'm not overly excited about Allen Robinson, but I do think that the volume alone should suffice in him being a relatively safe wide receiver 3 this week, going up against that Saints defense. Next matchup, we do have the Eagles traveling on the road to play the Indianapolis Colts. Colts are 7-point home underdogs in this game. 44 set over under, the under being hit at a 90% clip. And on the Eagles side, A.J. Brown, assuming he plays, is an auto start. Top 10 level wide receiver so far this year. I think he picks up the slack, assuming he is healthy for this game after suffering that injury on Monday Night Football. I also think Devontae Smith is a high-end wide receiver 3 and flex in this game for Philly. Are the two key targets in this Philadelphia offense when it comes to Brown and Devontae Smith. I think both can eat in this offense. Again, we really know where the targets are going. It's going to be distributed between these two players. I wouldn't be shocked if from here on out, with Goddard hurt, they command upwards of 60 to 65% of the team total targets in this offense. On the Colts side, Michael Pittman is a volume-dependent low-end wide receiver 2 in a brutal matchup against a feisty Eagles defense. You guys would have saw the rank on the matchup chart. The Eagles rank extremely highly. Very, very good pass defense. I think the volume alone should keep him afloat, but I'm extremely worried about Michael Pittman's potential ceiling in this matchup against Philly. I also think that Paris Campbell is a fine flex play as a mid to low end wide receiver 3. He's commanded 29% and 33% of the targets in the last 2 Matt Ryan starts. He is the clear trusted number 2 wide receiver for Matt Ryan on an offense that evidently picked up the slack this past week against Las Vegas. I like the upside of Campbell given his recent involvement and that big playability he possesses. Legit 4.3 speed, yards after catch type of player. I think he could break one off at any given moment. And if he's given the opportunity like he has been when Matt Ryan has been under center, I do think he is locked and loaded in my top 40 wide receivers any given week. Matchup, Jets at Patriots, another interdivisional affair. We have the Patriots being 3-point home favorites in this game. 38 set over under, with the under being hit at a 92% clip. Jet side, alpha rookie wide receiver Garrett Wilson is an auto start in your lineup. We've seen great volume from him all year, and now he has the opportunity to build off of it following that post-bye week rookie bump we can expect. Again, Garrett Wilson is still a young rookie wide receiver, commanding upwards of 23% of the team targets this year. Despite that, be a legit league winner down the stretch. Think of Amon St. Brown last year. Think of the other great talented rookie wide receivers that have come out down the stretch these past recent years. Garrett Wilson is the next one on that list. For the Patriots side, I think you could start Jacoby Myers as an every week top 24 wide receiver. He has commanded targets on this offense when he's been healthy and has really unlocked some touchdown upside this year that he's not had in recent years. He's Mac Jones wide receiver 1, boatload of targets. We can expect upwards of 8 to 10 targets in this game against New York. I think any given week on volume alone, he has to be inside of your top 24. A big rise for a player that was getting taken realistically in 10th, 11th, 12th round of a lot of your fantasy drafts. To the 4 p.m. slate, we have the Raiders traveling on the road to play the Broncos. Again, another interdivisional affair. Broncos are 2.5-point home favorites in this game. 41.5 set over under, with the under being hit at a 99% clip. These sharps are almost certain that this game is going to be under that clip. So expect a low-scoring, muddy affair between these two interdivisional opponents. But it's very simple here on the Raiders side. I mean, you're starting Devontae Adams no matter what. We obviously know he's elite. Don't overthink it. I get it. Tough matchup. Pat Surtain is no slouch in his own right. But Devontae Adams is point blank simply a good enough wide receiver to beat any single cornerback on the planet. Starter flex any other wide receiver on Las Vegas inside of my top 40, but the closest would be Mac Hollins. On the Broncos side, you can start Courtland Sutton with Jerry Jeudy expected to be out for this game. 25% seasonal target share for Sutton. Really seen Russ rely heavily upon number 14 anytime Jeudy is out of the lineup. I think anytime Judy's out, Courtland Sutton is a locked-in top 20 play at wide receiver, especially considering the matchup against this volatile Las Vegas defense that just gave up 25 points against the Indianapolis Colts this past week. Matchup, Bengals at Steelers. Again, another interdivisional affair. The NFL really loves scheduling these apparently, but Steelers are 4-point home underdogs in this game. 41 set over under, with the under being hit at an 82% clip. And on the Bengals side, you can start T. Higgins and flex Tyler Boyd. T. Higgins is an every week top 15 caliber wide receiver. And in this matchup against a Steelers D that has been susceptible to opposing wide receivers, he is set to feast in this game. I also think that Tyler Boyd is a solid top 30 level play at wide receiver. Is the second most trusted target of Joe Burrow going into this game. On the Steelers side, both George Pickens and Deontay Johnson are mid-level wide receiver 3 options and flexes. Deontay Johnson is currently the biggest empty calories player in the entire NFL right now, but things really change quickly, and better play from Kenny Pickett could turn this elite target commanding ability into a solid baseline for fantasy points. But until he shows that consistency, however, DJ will be stuck in the wide receiver 3 range with a volatile range of outcomes any given week. Pickens is really the opposite of Deontay Johnson for the most part. He is the big play threat of this offense and earns the valuable targets, but his target totals as a whole really pale in comparison to Deontay. And some more consistency from Pickett could raise both into that fringe top 25 level range at the wide receiver position. But until then, both of them are in that volatile wide receiver 3 range. Matchup, my beloved Dallas Cowboys traveling on the road to play the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings are 1.5-point home underdogs in this game. 47.5 over under, with the under being hit at a 68% clip. Cowboys side, I mean, you're starting CeeDee Lamb. I wouldn't feel comfortable putting another Cowboys wide receiver in your lineup, including Michael Gallup. But as we know, CeeDee Lamb is an elite target commander on a good offense, a top 5 level wide receiver play for me this weekend. I kind of brushed on Michael Gallup, but the peripherals aren't bad. He simply just needs to perform better, but until he shows it, I'll still be worried about his play returning from last season's late ACL tear happening in, I believe, week 16. So Gallup simply hasn't looked like the same player thus far. So until he shows that he can fully recover from that injury, he's not going to be inside my top 40 wide receivers. Viking side, very similar to CeeDee Lamb. Jefferson is an every week top 5 wide receiver and an auto start this week in this matchup. Volume alone, I get it. The matchup is tough. He's expected to see a lot of coverage from Trayvon Diggs in this matchup, but I mean, as we know, Justin Jefferson is as good of a wide receiver as anyone in the NFL. Any single matchup in any single given week. I also think that Adam Thielen, the clear-cut number 2 wide receiver for the Vikings passing offense, flexible mid-range wide receiver 3 this week. Again, the matchup isn't really ideal against a secondary that has been able to stick with this style of receiver, but in a high over-under game with 2 good offenses, he is a clear scoring threat for Minnesota like he's shown throughout his career. So Adam Thielen, volatile wide receiver 3, but he does have, wide receiver 2-1 upside. Justin Jefferson, set it and forget it every week, wide receiver 1. We head on to Sunday Night Football. We have the Chiefs traveling on the road to play the Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers are 6-point home underdogs in this game. 51 set over under, with the under being hit at a 78% clip. And on the Chiefs side, you are starting Kadarius Toney. It says though Juju Smith-Schuster will be out for this game. Marquez Valdes-Scantling carries a questionable tag with the illness that has popped up this week. If either or both are out of this game, more snaps for Kadarius Toney may result in a slate-breaking performance in a 51 set over-under game between 2 high-octane offense. He is a must-start for me. He is a fringe top 15 wide receiver. If you have Kadarius Toney, he is entering your lineup this week. On the Chargers side, things are a little bit more unclear. Play Keenan Allen and Mike Williams if they play in this game as top 24 level plays. And if one or both are out for this matchup, Palmer becomes a high-end wide receiver 3/flex option for me. Finally, closing off with Monday Night Football, we have the 49ers traveling on the road to play the Arizona Cardinals. Again, another interdivisional affair. Cardinals are 8-point home underdogs in this game. 43.5 set over under, with the under being hit at a 66% clip. On the 49ers side, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk are starts as top 15 level plays against the Cardinals this week. 49ers offense looks like it can absolutely click down the stretch going forward. On the side, DeAndre Hopkins is an every week auto top 10 wide receiver start, assuming he plays. He did miss Thursday's practice, but for the most part, I just think that was a Veterans Day. Maybe took a day off, Monday Night Football game, want to rest him throughout the week. He should be good to go for this matchup. Don't need to get too in depth, but he's an elite target commander on a high-pace offense. He's going to have a lot of value from fantasy football perspective. I also think that Rondale Moore is able to find his way as a top 30-ish level wide receiver play this week. Again, the 49ers have been very stout against opposing wide receivers, but Moore has shown the ability to command targets that keeps him relevant each and every week. And you guys would have seen the graphic already on my shoulder, but Rondale Moore in the past 3 weeks, 20% target share, 30% target share, 37% target share. Clearly an integral part of this Cardinals passing offense. Assuming Marquise Brown is out for this game, which I don't expect him to play, Rondale Moore every week, high-end wide receiver 3 in my rankings. But either way, I appreciate you guys for making it to the end of this video. And of course, if you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like down below. I mentioned the like goal at the beginning of the video, but let's try to get this video to over 200 likes. So again, you enjoy, hit the like. It's a fair exchange there. And of course, subscribe to the channel. We are on the road to 20,000 subscribers as always. Appreciate you guys for that continued support. Good luck in your matchups. We will see you on Sunday morning's live stream. And of course, good luck in clinching that playoff spot. We are in grind time. We need to get these wins. We need to secure these W's. And some of these plays this week, some of these decisions this week is going to mean the difference between clinching that playoff spot versus looking from the outside. So appreciate you guys for that support nonetheless. Take care.
Wire me the money.